We're at Holland's Boat Shop in Belfast, Maine, and we're talking with Glenn Holland about how he got started.
Well, if you really want to go back, I started with a block of wood and built little boats about that long.
Now, was that in Stonington where you grew up?
Yeah.
But your family's always been a fishing family.
Yeah, practically all of them. And my sister still is there and her husband. But when it comes to the real big boats, I started out in the fall of '72. I went down and bought a Repco 30 bare hull, stuck it up there on the lawn, built one of those plastic shelters around it, and finished it off.
Right.
And it was sold before I had it finished.
Right.
And before I could get it out of the plastic building, I had an order for another one. And so later that summer, that original building over there, we put that up that fall of '73 that was. And the rest is history, I guess.
How many Repcos did you finish off? You did quite a few of them, didn't you?
Oh, let's see, there was about a half a dozen of the 30-footers and those little 21-footers they used to build. There was about a half a dozen of those, and one 38-footer. Mm-hmm. And then I did 3 Weber's Cove 34s.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, I decided it was time to build my own boat. Because you couldn't buy what I really wanted. I wanted a Beals Island style boat.
Right.
And
so how did you come up with that?
Well, I had a bunch of drawings and a half model I'd done. And I took the whole works to Royal. Matter of fact, Royal came right here one day and we talked the whole works over. And then he went back and drew up this boat.
Right, the 30, but it was 30.
Originally it was 30, and then we lost it in a fire down East Booth Bay. We have his outfit down there build a house for us. Harry Farmer. And his shop burned up, and we lost them all. So I called a bunch of the people that had the boats, and I said, I got to build a new mold. Should I make any changes? And they all said, no, leave it alone. Nice little boat. But there was a fellow down at Spruce Head. He said, well, if you made her a couple of feet longer, I could put more gear on it. I said, well, okay. So just for the hell of it, I called up Royal, talked to him about it, and he said, yeah, he said, you could put a little more gear on, and he said, but also if you can keep the weight down, the boat would be faster. That was the key word, faster. So I said, in that case, it's a done deal. So we made a 32 out of her.
Right.
North End Marine, when they were still in North End, built I got my hands on one of the 30-foot hulls, took it to them, and they put an extension on it and come up with this 32. Mm-hmm. It's actually 21 inches longer than the 30. Mm-hmm. Everything else is exactly the same. Didn't change a thing.
So how much did Royal do, and how much did you do with the design?
I don't know, 50-50 maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I really, maybe, I don't know, let's call it 50-50.
Yeah. And so the first ones came out as the 30s.
The first ones came out.
How many of those did you do?
Oh, there was about, I think there was around 26, 27 of them built.
Right. And they're still going.
There's still a bunch of them around. Yeah, I see one every once in a while. There's one right down the harbor here.
Right.
Well, here's got one.
Now, with this one, talk about it. Tell us about the characteristics, that sort of thing.
Well, I can tell you what I told Royal. I said, I want a good looking boat, I want a good work boat, and one that'll go like hell. What more do you need?
Okay, so when did you, now in the interim, you had the Marguerite G, which was an Ernest Libby boat. And did you use anything from her?
Little bits and pieces. The shear line is similar.
Right.
It's a little different, but it's similar. That's about it, really.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I went down to Beals or any place else I could find a boat, Beals Island style boat, and took little cues from this one and that one and kind of put them all into one. And then I talked to Royal, and he come up with a lot of ideas of his own. He come up with a couple. He said, well, if we do this, she won't roll as much, and if we do this, she'll be a little faster and all this kind of stuff. There's that key word again.
Right, faster.
And he always wanted to build a fast boat that we could take down to Beals and show them that they weren't the only people in the world who could build a fast boat.
Right.
And unfortunately, he died before we got a chance to really do it. but he always wanted to build a boat like that. When I went and told him what I wanted to build for a boat, his face lit right up like a Christmas tree. He said, I've been waiting for somebody for years to ask me to do that.
Right, because most of them that he designed before that weren't.
No, they weren't. I can remember one back in the 60s he built for Arnold Machinery. It was a 36-footer. They put a big cat in it. That was, for the day, that was a fast boat.
Right.
And I don't know of any other, can't think of any others right off, but no, he liked the idea of building a boat that was going to go like hell.
Right. Now she's not 32. What is she length overall?
Well, 32 foot 3 inches.
Right. And she's got a pretty wide beam, even though she doesn't look like she's going to be wide.
Yeah, she's about 10 foot, if you count everything, 10 foot 9.
Yeah. And she doesn't grow very much.
3 feet.
Yeah.
No, the boat is bigger than it looks. Everybody thinks it's a real small boat just because of the looks.
Right.
But you tie it up next to some of them older wooden Jones Porters and Beals Island boats, and she's a hell of a lot bigger. Mm-hmm. And you tie her up next to some of the other so-called big boats that were built just about the same time she was. She's as big, if not bigger, than they are.
Right.
So the boat's kind of deceiving. Mm-hmm. She doesn't look as big as she is.
Now, you had a way of advertising that the Young Brothers also did, the Duffys did too, and that was racing.
Yeah, we did do that.
And that actually gave you a pretty good name up and down the coast.
Yeah, a lot of people call me a lot of things. Some of it you could print, some of it you couldn't.
Right. When did you first campaign this boat, or the hull? Because the Baron came out in '81, but was that the first one you raced?
She was built in, when was she built? Well, we built the hull in we started it the fall of 1980. She didn't hit the water until, wait a minute, 79. She went overboard to go racing in 81.
Right.
Is when she went in the water. And there again, kind of the rest is history, more or less.
Mm-hmm. But what did you first power her with?
She had just a little 460 cubic inch Ford that was rated at 340 horse. And she went exactly, according to the cops on there, I hadn't put their radar gun on it, and she did just 33 miles an hour.
Right.
And we went to Beals Island a few weeks later and beat a boat that was supposedly doing over 50. So when we came back here, I said, "Baby, why don't we clock this thing again? Something happened between here and there." And she was right back to 33 miles an hour again.
Right.
Yeah, Alton Smith had that little shingle he used to have back in those days, and supposedly it was do 50. Running with the tide, we could outrun him. Against the tide, he could just barely creep by us.
Right.
And everybody down there was going right crazy because we beat that little shingle that was doing supposedly right around 50 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. But that kind of launched the hull, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. But everybody that bought them after that didn't give a damn how fast it went.
No. They liked the looks.
Yeah, they like the look more than anything. And that's what's selling the boats now, is the looks. Mm-hmm. And all the boats we're building now practically are pleasure boats. Mm-hmm. The fishermen are not buying them like they did. Occasionally.
But do you think they will? Because with the changes in the industry right now?
They might be back.
Because you've got a picture over here that Brian Robbins took with how many traps? 85 traps?
80, over 80, yeah.
Are they 3-footers or 4-footers?
I really don't remember. Mike could tell you.
Right.
I think they're 3.5, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think, it might have been 3.5, something like that, yeah.
But that's a lot of traps.
But there's over 80 of them on there. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many traps do you want to handle in the course of a day?
Right.
That's probably at least 70 more than I want to mess with.
But you had all kinds of engines in this boat when you raced. Because I remember you with an Isuzu.
Well, she started out with that 460 at 340 horse. Here's another thing that was interesting. When we first showed up down there with that boat, everybody felt sorry for us because we were running that Ford. We should have had an Oldsmobile or a Cadillac or a Buick. Mm-hmm. And when the race was all over, of course they allowed how we didn't have enough power. But when it was all over, there were some people that were claiming we had too much power. We were cheating. That's strange. How come things changed all of a sudden?
Oh, well.
But we've always had big block Fords, and with one exception, there was a 426 Hemi we stuck in there for one summer. And she went real good with that until we turned the bearing and freaked that crank up.
Right.
And then she did have an Isuzu diesel in her for a while.
I remember that.
And we did pretty good with that too.
Yeah.
And then I had to quit racing for a while because of my health. My wife said if I didn't get the house finished, she was going to kill me. So I had to stop racing and go back building a house.
But then you went to Chief Engines.
Well, yeah, we went back racing again, and we bought we got our hands on the Nashville, a Ford Cadillac SVO, the race parts, and we picked out the biggest engine they had in there and bought it. And we had somebody a fellow from Bucksport ran a speed shop, put it together for us. And the very first race, she blew a piston. But then right shortly after that, we got involved with Tom Hofstetter at Chief Engines down in Fort Lauderdale. Best move we ever made. Once he started working on that engine, we never had any more problems, and it ran like hell.
And that's when you set the record.
That's when we set the record.
And it was 58 point something, wasn't it?
57.8.
Yeah.
And we're looking for a lot more than that, ain't we? A lot more.
A lot more. A lot more. So then, how did the 38 come about?
Well, I lost my mind, I guess. I'm not sure.
But you went back to Royal. Well, no, Royal was
Well, I did call Royal up. For some reason, I thought, well, I want to build a 36. I think people were looking for something. They liked this boat, but they wanted something just a little bit bigger. So I said, well, maybe a 36 would be good. And I ran it. Well, I went down. I just happened to be down to Southwest Hampton. I stopped in to see Mac Pettigrew. And he said, why don't you build a 38 instead? And I asked him why, and he showed me a couple of boats that he said one would go like hell if you put power enough in it, and the other one didn't look worth a damn no matter what you did to it for a yacht. So he said, why don't you build something that's going to look decent and go good? So I said, I called Royal and ran it by him. He said, yeah, we can, that's doable. I said, I want it based pretty much on the 32, just scaled up, whatnot. He said, yeah, but he was real busy at the time, and so wasn't I. So they said, well, I'll get back in touch with you in a couple of weeks. Well, just a short time later, I found out he died.
Right.
So I guess I'm not going to go see him. So the whole thing, I just forgot it. And then about a year later, I said, well, maybe I'll just dig out the drawings for this boat. And I basically drew her up myself.
Right.
I just took those drawings, just basically scaled everything up. And I've still got the original drawing.
Now, Billy Lowe did the
I gave him that drawing that I had, and he took it. And I said, here's what I want for a boat. I said, I'll let you straighten things out a little bit. I know there's things on it that ought to be changed a little.
Right.
So I gave him the drawings, and he did. He straightened them out, and this is what we came up with.
And he built the plug, right?
And he built the plug.
And then Wayne Canning.
He built both plugs. He built the plug for this 32.
Did he?
Yeah.
And then Wayne Canning did the mold for that one.
Wayne did the mold. I didn't have a building to put the plug in.
Right, and he did.
And he did. He was putting up a building, so I took it up to him. And once he got his building done, he said, geez, he said, why don't I work on this plug for you? I said, okay, go ahead. So he built, finished up the plug. And then he built the mold, and he started building the boats. He built them for, I don't know, 8-10 years ago.
Now, how many 32s have you built? You're up over 180?
It's right in that neighborhood, yeah.
Right.
And the 38s are not too far behind. They're probably 170 something.
Yeah. And then somebody got the brilliant idea, let's extend it even more. So you have how many of those out there? The 40s?
There's two 40-footers,
and two
41-footers. And I found out over the weekend there's another guy talking about a 41. He's got a bigger boat and he wants to move down a little bit.
Right.
The boat he's got now, we cleaned his clock with the ball breaker.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't like that. He had this brand spanking new boat with a big engine, supposed to go like hell. And we had that ball breaker with a smaller engine. And needless to say, we outran him. Now he's talking about getting one.
And then when did the 14 come in?
Oh, that was the mid-90s. When I was a kid living down in Stonington, there's a lot of kids had boats that size because they were smaller than that boat, but they were roughly 12, 14 feet. Let's say 16 was a big one. And they ran all over, used to haul traps with and whatnot. Some of them had them just to play with. And of course, at the time, I was just, 7, 8, 10 years old. I always liked it because I was a little too young to have one. So I kind of got the bright idea, damn it, now that I'm a little bit older, I want one. So that's why we came up with that boat.
Right.
Only she's considerably bigger. But
And that's kind of selling like hotcakes now.
it has been, yeah.
Every time I talk to you, you got 10 sold.
It seems like every time we get one finished and goes out the door, somebody orders another one.
Right. Which is not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. The only thing is, with the lack of crew right now, I really should be paying more attention to the big boats.
Stuff. Yeah.
Because you got to build a lot of 14-footers to make up for 138.
Right.
And with the lack of crew, it just ain't happening.
No.
So we've kind of slacked off on building the 14s. We don't even advertise them anymore, really.
And now you got a 20. You got 3 of them sold.
20's in the works, and there's 3 of those sold already.
And so what point are you at now? You just put
The plug's all laid up,
Right.
planked up, and they're over there just fairing things in right now. And then we're going to glass the outside of it, and then do the finish fairing after we get it glassed. And then hopefully sometime this fall we'll be able to pull a mold off of it and start building those.
Right.
But there again, lack of help. I guess that's it. We're up to date, I guess.
We're up to date. This is Gavin Holland. This is Glenn Holland's grandson. So Gavin, how'd you get involved? Besides that, every once in a while you were here.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of cast into it from birth, I guess, really.
You've been here ever since you were little.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was walking around this shop when I was just a year old, So I've been around these boats literally my entire life. It's kind of the thing I know best. It's the only thing I really do know, I think. But yeah, I started helping out around here, sweeping floors and things, and I was around 7, 8 years old. I was just looking for some money to buy video games or whatever I was interested in that time, and I started to get into a little bit of working on the boats myself, just helping out with whatever needed to be done, and eventually I just found interest in it, and I never really stopped.
No, and you have a really good understanding. Is that all from him, or did you start looking other places for?
Well, I had a lot of resources, I mean, a lot of it definitely came from him. I mean, he's the one who designed the boat. He's the one I went to for questions most of the time, but, we also had a lot of crew in here, and I've done a lot of my research, on my own, read a lot of books and things like that. I've taught myself drafting and, all that sort of things. I've designed.
Do you have a computer? Because I know he doesn't.
I do, yeah. I still I do most of my stuff on paper still. It's really, I find it's easier to organize things when I write it out myself. I remember things better, I learn it easier, and there's no technological barrier in my way, when I'm developing something.
Right.
But yeah, I do my own drawings and things, and I really enjoy doing it.
So what did you start doing? You said you started on the 14s. Well, now you're up to the 32s.
Well, I guess the first thing you really started doing was building those little boats in your basement there, cutting out those little models, and take a piece of 2x4 and you just shave it down on the bandsaw, and you put a little eye on the bow of it, and then you just hook a string to it and pull it around.
Right.
I used to make those things all the time. I got a bunch of them hanging around here, but they're anyway. So I built a bunch of those, and so I guess I kind of got the feel for that, the tools, when I was really young. And so when I came in here and started to work on the bigger boats, which was in the beginning mostly the 14s, you know, I already had a little bit of experience with it. I was already comfortable with the tools, so it just made it more natural to get into it. But you know, I built 14s for a while, and then we started doing things on 32s, like framing windows and you know, simple cutting jobs and things like that. You know, that was, you know, achievable for somebody 10 years old.
Right.
But, you know.
I mean, this is what isn't usually explained is how old you were when you were doing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally cutting out window trim at 10 years old. You know, we were in here using routers and planers and bandsaws and all kinds of things.
Well, wasn't there a story about you in high school where something about most of the kids had no idea what the machine was, and you said, "Oh, that's easy, watch."
Yeah, well, you know, a shop class we had in 7th grade, we actually had a tank test boat project where everybody had to build their own boat, and it could be made out of anything you wanted. Didn't matter what it was. People built them out of plastic bent with a heat gun, just curled up into the crudest shapes you ever seen, and just people getting their hands caught in saws and burning themselves with glue guns, just total chaos all the time. But so what I did, I said, I'm not going to look that foolish. I'm going to go home and do some research. So I talked to him, and we actually made a little jig for a hard chine, just little probably, I don't know, 10-inch boat maybe. It was planked, had a full jig and everything. It was glued seams, and it had a surface drive in it, a little motor. So what I did is I thought, well, everybody's probably going to assume that the biggest wheel is probably the best idea. You know, you get the most thrust out of it. So I put what was pretty much an airplane propeller on the back of this thing and brought it in, and I had the real one in my pocket. And so I just, you know, set it on the bench, and on the last day when everybody was wrapping up their projects and people came around, they're like, wow, look at the size of that wheel, you know, that thing's going to go like crazy. And so everybody started swapping their wheels around, and, you know, thinking that was going to help them out. And I swapped mine over at the last minute, and, well, it ended up being the fastest one in the class. But
was she close to this design?
It had a similar profile to the 14, I would say, if anything. But, it wasn't really like we were trying to make the prettiest boat in the world. It was thrown together pretty quick, and it was as light as it could possibly be.
So now you've done everything on these boats.
Yeah, I've built 38 start to finish, and 32s and 14 tons. I've built 70-something 14s now, finished them in just the amount of time I've been here. And part of that is just due to they're more popular now. There's just way more of them being ordered, so that's the majority of what I end up building. And you can build them so quick. I can build, 10 to 15 in a year. So, I put a lot of them out.
But would you rather be doing like your grandfather, the 32s and the 38s?
Well, some parts of it I like building the big boats. Yeah, it's fun. It's more rewarding at the end. I think the feeling you get when you're done with the bigger boats is more of a payoff than you do with the 14. But the 14 is more of a instant gratification thing. Right. You know, because you finish it in 2-3 weeks, it's done, and you have a nice looking boat. You can see the look on the customer's face, and everything's right there, and it's easy, and it's not painful, and you're not upside down working on it. And so. There's good and bad parts of both, but I really do like building the big boats. It's a lot of fun. I especially like the speed part of it and dealing with the engines.
So you're working on this 32 here, and it's going to be finished out as just a day boat?
Yeah, pretty much just a bare bones, basic day boat yacht kind of style. Pretty simple, but it'll have a galley or a small little head and maybe a galley section, and nice bunks down below, but. Nothing too fancy.
Right, powered with?
It's 550 Cummins.
Yeah, so she's going to move?
Yeah, it should go pretty good. Probably
close to 40?
Right, yeah, around 40, depending on the wheel he picks. Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yep. Yeah. And then the 38, that's headed to California, isn't it?
Yeah, that one's going to San Diego. That one is going to be a pretty big custom job. That is going to be a real fancy one. He's cutting the top and making some curvy side panel section and all kinds of things. It's kind of, that one's going to be pretty complicated. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be probably a good year. Yeah. You know, it probably, if I had to guess, next summer, end of next summer, somewhere in there, depending on how much he's really adding.
So you like racing?
Sure do.
But you haven't convinced him to bring the Baron in yet.
Well, we had something in the way for a while. We had the 20-foot plug here recent years. Really? That's been in the Baron spot. It's not that that's out of the way. That is more achievable. Right. Right now, we just got too many irons in the fire. That's really the biggest thing. We got too many projects. We got too many boats to build, not enough help. So that's why the Baron, she's still sitting out back gray.
So we looking for next year? In some stage?
Maybe. It would be nice. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.